It's time for the real Jonathan Smith Show. This is Indy Sports Ticket 1430 AM, 93.9 HD2, and always on the free Indy Sports Ticket app.
What's going on? It's the real Jonathan Smith Show here on Indy's Sports Ticket. Hopefully you've had a nice start to your week. Big night of basketball tonight. Indiana taking on Michigan State. Purdue's playing Michigan in the rematch. The Pacers, they're going to New York. They're taking on the Knicks. So just a ton of hoops tonight, which is pretty great. But we're going to start with the Indianapolis Colts. Should the Colts bring in Aaron Rodgers? This is a question that's going to be asked everywhere, and we're going to get a lot of mixed responses, even though I think that the answer to this is pretty straightforward. Absolutely not. The Colts should, under no circumstance, bring in Aaron Rodgers, because Aaron Rodgers has a habit of thinking that he's bigger than the franchise, and he's not anymore. If this is the Aaron Rodgers of a decade ago, absolutely. Bring him in, clear out everything, let him do whatever he wants. But the reality of it is, he's just not a good quarterback anymore. The Jets gave him everything that he wanted last year, and they went 5-12. The Jets fired Robert Saleh because Aaron Rodgers wanted them to, and they got worse after they did that. They traded away draft capital to acquire his guy, Devontae Adams. They hired Nathaniel Hackett so he could call plays for Aaron Rodgers because that's what Aaron Rodgers wanted. They gave him everything that he asked for. They had already built an exceptional defense, and Aaron Rodgers led them to a 5-12 record. He had Garrett Wilson and Devontae Adams as his two best wide receivers for 11 games, and he couldn't throw for 4,000 yards. 4,000 yards isn't that many anymore. It's not. In fact, Aaron Rodgers posted a career low in passer rating this year. His second lowest passer rating in a season came his final year in Green Bay. That was the last time that he started and finished a full season. He posted the second lowest quarterback rating of his career this year. Right, the lowest of his career came his final year in Green Bay. You know, the last time that he started a full season. He threw 28 touchdowns this year. That was the third lowest mark in a season of his career, of which he played a full season. He threw 11 interceptions this year, which is the third most he's thrown in a season. His final year in Green Bay, he threw 12. That's the highest, the second highest mark of his career. His yards per attempt last season was a whopping 6.7. That's not very good. That was also the lowest mark of his career. And do you want to guess when the second lowest mark of his career came in terms of the yards per attempt stat? Oh, it came his final year in Green Bay. Last year, he posted his second lowest amount of average passing yards per game. The lowest mark of his career came in his final year in Green Bay. Are you noticing a trend? The last two times Aaron Rodgers has started and finished the season, this last year with the Jets and his final year with the Packers, he had his two worst seasons of his career. He is clearly on the decline, and the steep drop off the cliff is coming. He does not need to come to Indianapolis. What's he going to do? Show up, ruin everything, and then leave? That's what he's doing up there in New York right now. Got a whole bunch of people fired, and they're like, you know what? I don't think we want to be in business with you anymore, Aaron. He's like, oh, okay. Let me go smoke crack in a dark room all summer. He doesn't need to come to Indianapolis. He's not the mentoring type. You know, I have talked about, Anthony Richardson in the off-field struggles. Do we really want him hanging out with Aaron Rodgers with all the off-field issues he's had? Also let's also not forget that Aaron Rodgers didn't like Jordan Love. He didn't like the idea of competing with him. He's not going to come to Indianapolis because he doesn't want to have to compete with Anthony Richardson. Now, that being said, I would like to think that Aaron Rodgers understands that he's just in a different place in his career, but Aaron Rodgers is as delusional as they come. Don't do drugs, kids. This is what happens when you do. Aaron Rodgers doesn't need to come to Indianapolis. It is the last place that he needs to go, honestly, for both sides of this. First and foremost, I don't want another Band-Aid fix. Okay, we had that for 5 years in a row with Chris Ballard, Phillip Rivers to Carson Wentz to Matt Ryan. It wasn't good. It wasn't good. Okay, and if Aaron Rodgers comes here, he's going to be here for 2 years at most. The Colts are going to have to pay him a whole bunch of money to be here for those 2 years. And then once those 2 years are up, the Colts are going to look around and be like, geez, we don't have a quarterback again. I don't want to go through that whole process again of just bringing in a Band-Aid quarterback. Also, he's not going to come here. Why would Aaron Rodgers come here? He's Aaron freaking Rodgers. He's going somewhere where he feels like he can win a Super Bowl, and he's going to go somewhere where he can be the unquestioned starter. That's where he's going to go. He's one of the best quarterbacks in the history of the NFL. He's not about to go to a place where he has to compete with a quarterback for the starting job that posted the second lowest completion percentage in NFL history. That would probably feel like a slap to the face of Aaron Rodgers. Okay, he's going somewhere where he can step in and be the immediate starter. That is where he's going. Think, the Pittsburgh Steelers, because it doesn't seem like Russell Wilson's the answer to their problems. Think the Browns, if they don't draft a quarterback with that number 2 overall pick. He could be a Las Vegas Raider. That actually makes a ton of sense, even though I don't think he'd go there because you're just not going to win very many games if you go to Las Vegas. But he's not going to be a Colt. He's not. It doesn't line up for either side. Sure, he gives, Anthony Richardson a little bit of competition, but Aaron Rodgers as the starting quarterback is problematic. Imagine the behavior we'd get from Aaron Rodgers if he was the backup. I mean, look, for me and for my show, it would be great. Aaron Rodgers would give me content every single day, and I would probably have a lot of fun with it. But in the best interest of the Colts, do not go sign Aaron Rodgers. He doesn't fix any of your issues. Okay? He doesn't. The guy that the Colts should go get, and I've come around on this since, about 2:15 yesterday in the afternoon. We were doing the power hour on the Dan Dockett show, which is every Monday from 2 to 3. It's me, Ken Sterling, and Dan, obviously. And they threw out the name Justin Fields, which I was immediately appalled by because I'm not a Justin Fields guy. I'm not. Like, when you put together a highlight package of a quarterback, of their best plays from a season, if 60% of them are running plays, then I'm sorry. That's just not the quarterback that I want. Okay, unless it's Lamar Jackson, because he's clearly become a very talented thrower of the football. Justin Fields hasn't developed into that at all. I mean, he had an opportunity to start games this year, and, sure, he went 4-2. But he didn't throw the ball over the middle of the field. And you can't win games in the NFL if you can't throw the ball over the middle of the field. With that being said, I do think that Justin Fields would be a better option than Aaron Rodgers, because there's a world where I'm wrong. Okay, there's a world where Justin Fields works his butt off in the offseason. He figures out how to throw the football over the middle of the field. He becomes a better processor. Maybe playing behind a better offensive line, because the Colts have a better offensive line than Chicago, and they probably have a better offensive line than the Steelers. Like, if he maybe playing behind that offensive line helps him. Maybe playing alongside Jonathan Taylor helps him. Okay? I just, look, it's year 5 for him. So I'm not convinced that he would be much better, but there is a possibility where he improves, and maybe he then becomes the long-term option for the Colts at quarterback. I don't think that he will, but that is a much greater possibility than Aaron Rodgers showing up and winning a whole bunch of games, because he hasn't won much of anything the last 2 times he's been the full-time starter. He went 8-9 his final year in Green Bay, and he went 5-12 this last year in New York. The ceiling with Justin Fields is much higher than the one with Aaron Rodgers. And look, I'm a ceiling guy. I am. Like, that's why I didn't mind the Colts taking Anthony Richardson with the 4th pick. It's like, look, dude's got a high ceiling. If he figures it out, he's going to be really good. He just hasn't. It happens sometimes. Okay. I'm also a long-term guy, and Justin Fields long-term is a better, cheaper investment than Aaron Rodgers. That's the other thing. Like, if you go get Aaron Rodgers, you're going to have to pay him significantly more money than if you go get Justin Fields. Like, Justin Fields, cheaper. You can use the rest of your cap space to address the many, many issues that the Colts have. Okay, whether that's corner, safety, linebacker, whatever it is. So go get Justin Fields. Let's see if he can finally figure it out here in Indianapolis. Now, will the Colts do any of this? That's kind of the question. Will the Colts, sack up a little bit, go and be aggressive? Howie Roseman is one of the most aggressive general managers in the NFL, and that's why they won the Super Bowl. Okay, like he did all of these moves just like this previous offseason, and it paid off in a major, major way. He goes out and he signs Saquon Barkley in free agency. He ends up being the offensive player of the year in the NFL this year, and the 9th running back in NFL history to run for over 2,000 yards in a single season. Howie Roseman was aggressive in hiring coordinators. He goes out and he hires Kellen Moore. He goes out and he hires Vic Fangio. Okay, yeah, that was him, not Sirianni. He put together a great draft class. Gets Quinyon Mitchell in the first round. Takes Cooper DeJean in the second round. Both ended up being finalists for the Defensive Rookie of the Year award. Their biggest need was on the back end of the defense, and he addressed it in the best way possible. He got 2 rookies who could come in and contribute pretty much immediately. Like Quinyon Mitchell was a starter from day one. It took Cooper DeJean a little bit longer to kind of figure it out, but now he's housing interceptions in a Super Bowl. It's just pretty incredible. Okay, like he hit on 2 high draft picks that were able to contribute. You have to do that if you want to win a Super Bowl. He was able to find a couple of overlooked players to come in and contribute. Zach Bond was an all-pro linebacker this year, almost won Defensive Player of the Year. The Eagles signed him in the offseason. He was a special teams player previously. Mekhi Becton was a first-round draft pick by the Jets. He was supposed to be their left tackle of the future. It didn't work out. Jets don't extend him or pick up that 5th-year option. So Howie Roseman signs him, and he's like, "Hey, we're not gonna have you play guard, or excuse me, we're not gonna have you play tackle. We're gonna have you play guard." And now he's one of the best offensive guards in the NFL. Oren Burks and former Colts Isaiah Rodgers are backups who have contributed to the Eagles' success over these past few seasons. Okay, Howie Roseman's ability to draft well, do some money ball type stuff in terms of finding overlooked players to play roles on a Super Bowl team is the reason why they won the Super Bowl. You have to bet on something as a general manager. You have to trust your scouts. Like the Colts pay people to scout the rest of the NFL. That way they know about free agents and all those things. And I don't know why. I have no clue as to why, because the Colts never sign free agents. Raekwon Davis, that was the big signing last offseason. The Eagles won the Super Bowl in part because they did a great job of signing free agents. Mekhi Becton, Zach Bond, Saquon Barkley, all 3 played very large roles in the season for the Eagles. Okay, the Eagles and Howie Roseman take a ton of swings at players. It's a large part of why they win. You have to, just straight up, like you kind of got to get lucky if you're going to win a Super Bowl. You have to hit on several draft picks or sign unattractive free agents that no one else really wanted that end up contributing more than you thought that they would. And the Colts never give themselves an opportunity to luck into that because they just don't do anything. Hey, guys, we have a first-round pick this year. I say we trade down for a second, for another second and a third. Let's do that. That's the Colts philosophy. Let's trade down and you just kind of see what happens. Oh, those free agents, they're too expensive. Look, you're Indianapolis. You're going to have to overpay a little bit for some free agents because I'll tell you right now, if I had an option between going and playing for, I don't know, the Dallas Cowboys and living in Dallas, or coming up here and playing for the Colts, same amount of money, I'm going to go to Texas. It's warm down there, no state income tax, never anything like that. Okay, so Chris Ballard, offer a little more money and let's bring some guys in. Okay, the Colts never take a swing on anything. It's why their core players have been the same for the last 6 years. Okay, it's been Quentin Nelson and Jonathan Taylor on the side of Luke and Buckner on the side of Lucas Oil Stadium for what feels like the last 5 years. Okay, you have to be aggressive in acquiring players. The Colts aren't, and that is why they struggle to make the playoffs. Okay, you got to be aggressive, and you got to make some sort of attempt to go get good players at some point, and the Colts just never really seem to do that. Speaking of good players, Michigan State tonight hosting Indiana. There's a path for Indiana to win this game. There is. Look, people are going to look at that, I believe, number 11 beside Michigan State's name, and then they're going to look at the line and be like, oh, it's an 11.5-point spread. The, Hoosiers of Indiana have absolutely no chance to win this game tonight. Michigan State just too good. They could win the Big Ten, all that kind of stuff. But I say nay. There is a path for the Hoosiers to pull off the upset tonight, and I'm going to give it to you when we come back here in about 4 minutes.
Unadulterated sports talk with unfiltered takes. It's the real Jonathan Smith Show on Indy Sports Ticket, 1430 AM and 99.5 HD2.
What's going on? The real Jonathan Smith Show here on Indy's Sports Ticket. Hopefully you're having a nice start to your day. Open the show up talking a little Aaron Rodgers to the Indianapolis Colts and why it's such a terrible idea. That's the last thing that the Indianapolis Colts need. More distractions. Nah. Pass on that. We're good. Indiana taking on Michigan State tonight. Also, thanks for tuning in, no matter how you're tuning in, whether that's YouTube, Twitter, the Indy Sports Ticket app, or maybe just good old 1430 AM. Kevin Potts is joining the show coming up at 11 o'clock to put a little bow on the NFL season. Now, Indiana, they're taking on Michigan State tonight. Can Indiana finally beat a good team? Probably not. The good news is Michigan State hasn't beaten many good teams either. In their non-conference, they played two good teams in Kansas and Memphis. They lost both. Sure, they beat North Carolina, but they're underachieving in a bad ACC. Okay, their best win of the year, Michigan State, was against Illinois, who just fell out of the top 25. And in that game, Kasparis, I can never pronounce this kid's last name. Kasparis Yakusionis, let's go with that, fouled out after only playing 9 minutes. He pulled a Malik Renew against Purdue. Illinois' best player only played 9 minutes, and Michigan State only won that game by 2. Michigan State's also lost 2 of their last 3 games. They lost to UCLA and USC. Neither one of those teams are ranked. USC is not even getting votes to be ranked. In fact, Indiana beat USC. Just saying. All right. Michigan State hasn't beaten a ton of good teams. Now, to be fair, they've avoided losing to a lot of the bad ones. Okay, it's why they're 11.5-point favorites against Indiana tonight. And with that being said, if USC can beat Michigan State, then Indiana can definitely beat Michigan State. Indiana is the third worst three-point shooting team in the Big Ten. Okay, that is a fact. It's bad. The good news is Michigan State's last in the Big Ten in three-point shooting. They are an awful three-point shooting team at just 29% from beyond the three-point line. But Michigan State does a good job rebounding and sharing the basketball. They're actually second in both of those things. They're second in total rebounds. They're second in rebound differential at plus 10 per game. They're second in assists. They also protect the rim incredibly well. They lead the Big Ten in blocks per game at just over 5 blocks per game on average. Okay, like that leads me into what they do well. They are an excellent defensive basketball team. They can guard every position. Indiana is going to struggle to score tonight. They are. But so is Michigan State because they don't shoot the ball very well. They want to get to the rim. And Indiana is, that they're going to play 2 bigs because that's what Mike Woodson likes to do. And so now guys are going to be driving to the rim and they got to finish over Ballo and Renew and Mbako. It's 3 large guys. Okay, so I expect this to be a low-scoring game. With that being said, there is a path for Indiana to win this basketball game. If they can have a night like they did against Northwestern, where they move the ball really well and they shoot 45% from 3, or if they can have a night like they did against Maryland, when they shot 42% from 3, then they'll have an excellent chance to win because the chances of Michigan State lining them up and knocking them down from downtown is just not very high. Okay? And Indiana is capable of having a night where they shoot the ball well from 3. We've seen it multiple times throughout Big Ten play. Obviously, the Northwestern game and the Maryland game, but we've also seen them do it against Purdue. They shot like 38% from 3 in that game. We saw them do it against Rutgers. They were around 38% from 3 in that game. They did it against Penn State. And that second half against Michigan, they shot 37% from 3. Okay, so like we have seen examples and long stretches where Indiana has consistently shot the ball well. And they're going to have to do that tonight because Michigan State is a great team on the defensive end of the floor. Okay? They're third in the Big Ten in points allowed. They lead the Big Ten in opponent field goal percentage. They hold their opponents to only 30% shooting from three. That's the second highest mark in the Big Ten. Okay, so Indiana's going to have to find a way to generate open shots for guys like Luke Goody, because let's just be honest, this is not a big Luke Goody show. But with that being said, he's the best shooter on this team. Okay, so the guys who can shoot the basketball are going to have to shoot it well tonight. I know, just groundbreaking analysis right there. But Michigan State is beatable. You have to find, you better hit shots when you're open, because you're not going to get very many of them. And you have to turn them over. They turn the basketball over a lot. In fact, they turn the ball over the third most of any team in the Big Ten. Okay, so there's room there. Maybe you get up and you pressure the basketball a little bit, force them to turn it over. That helps even out the rebounding disadvantage, even though I think Indiana's going to be fine on the glass because they're going to play two bigs and do all that kind of stuff. Okay, so you have to turn them over. The issue is Indiana turns the basketball over the second most in the Big Ten. I'm trying to be positive here. Like, I was looking last night. I'm just looking for any ray of sunshine that I can find. And it's like every time I found one, it was like, oh, but yeah, Indiana's not very good at that either. It's like, oh, Michigan State, they can't shoot the ball very well from three. It's like, oh, well, neither can Indiana. Okay. Oh, look at that. Michigan State turns the basketball over a ton. Oh, so does Indiana. So, but it's tough being really positive about this IU team. But there is a path to victory for them tonight. It's very narrow. Okay. If Indiana can find a way to make some outside shots, if Luke Goody can hit 4 or 5 threes, like, they're going to be in a good spot to win the game. Like this is, like, I talk about shooting all the time and the importance of being able to shoot the three ball. It is, the great equalizer in college hoops, or really at any level. I think the reason why I talk about 3-point shooting so much is because I watch the NBA all the time. And, the NBA is not all about making threes, but it's a pretty large proponent of how they play ball at that level. And they score a ton of points the way that they do it. But anyway, if Indiana can make some outside shots, if they can shoot 36% from three, I think they're going to have a real chance to win this game. Because when you outscore your opponent from beyond the 3-point line, like, it swings things in your favor. Like, if I make 4 more threes than you do, like that's 12 points. That's a lot of points. Okay, so if they can shoot around 36% from three, if they can, keep the turnovers around 10, they can force, Michigan State to turn it over 15 times, then they will have a chance. The issue, and this is why I don't think that Indiana wins. This is why I don't think that they really even cover. The issue is you have to be mentally engaged if you want to avoid turning the basketball over. You have to be mentally engaged if you want to force the other team to turn it over. And that hasn't exactly been in Indiana's thing this year. Their thing has just kind of been like laziness and loafing and those types of things. And, like, that's just not going to get it done on the road against Michigan State, who's one of the best teams in all of college hoops. Okay? But to be fair to Indiana, they've been closer to the hump than normal in 3 of their last 4 games against good teams. Okay, like, they have been. Like, they lose to Michigan by 3 after, going down 17 heading into halftime. They lost to Purdue by 5, had the lead at halftime in that game. They lost to Maryland by 1, a team that's now ranked and is pretty good. Okay, maybe a good version of Indiana shows up tonight and gives us a good ball game to watch. Like, I make fun of Mike Anderson and the whole get over the hump thing every Wednesday. Tomorrow is get over the hump day, and I can't wait. It's like, it's one of my favorite days of the week. But in all seriousness, like, they have been close, and you would think that at some point, like, they find a way to kind of punch through and grab a win. You would assume, maybe. I don't know. We'll see. I think it'll just kind of depend on which version of Indiana we get to show up tonight. But I'm incredibly intrigued. I just hope the game is better than what the Super Bowl was. Speaking of the Super Bowl, Kevin Potts, he's going to join the show coming up here in about 30 minutes. We're going to put a bow on the NFL season. He's a big NFL draft guy, so we'll probably talk about that a little bit as well. And then we'll talk about the idea of Aaron Rodgers to Indianapolis, which teams should be pursuing him. Where should he want to go? If I was him, I think Pittsburgh's the pretty obvious answer. You know, they got a pretty solid roster. They need a quarterback. Apparently, Aaron Rodgers and Mike Tomlin are good buddies, but you know that doesn't really mean much of anything. But we'll see what they wind up doing when we come back. Though, here in about 4 minutes, Purdue, they play tonight against Michigan, a team that they absolutely dogged the last time out, and I'm very intrigued to see what that game looks like. My thoughts on Purdue and Michigan when we come back here in about 4 minutes.
Often imitated, never duplicated. The real Jonathan Smith Show. This is Indy Sports Ticket 1430 AM, 93.9 HD2, and always on the free Indy Sports Ticket app.
What's going on? The real Jonathan Smith Show here on Indy's Sports Ticket. Thanks for tuning in, no matter how you're tuning in, whether that's YouTube, Indy's Sports Ticket. If you want to head over there and subscribe, maybe you're watching on Twitter, __ Jonathan Smith. If you want to watch there, maybe you're listening via that Indy Sports Ticket app, which you can download wherever you get your apps, or maybe you're listening via 1430 AM, no matter how you're listening. It is greatly, greatly appreciated. But YouTube's probably the best way to watch. I won't even lie to you. Josie chiming in via the YouTube chat saying that IU segment was for wishful thinkers. It definitely was. It's just nice to try to be positive from time to time. With that being said, IU fans, if you want to watch a real basketball team play, a team that actually knows what they're doing, you can watch Purdue play at 7 right before your game. So Purdue, Michigan, big game tonight. A lot of Big Ten title implications on the game. Are we going to get a Michigan revenge game? Purdue embarrassed them in West Lafayette the last time that they played. Purdue beat them by 27. My favorite stat from that game is the fact that Michigan had more turnovers than field goals made. Pretty incredible, if you ask me. Purdue just swarmed them from the jump. It's like watching a pack of lions jump on a wounded gazelle. Danny Wolf, good player. 7-foot point guard, though. That ball's in the air a long time when it's going from the floor back up to your hand. And, they just, like I said, they got after them at such a high level. And tonight's game should be better than the last one, because I'm just going to assume that Michigan's not going to turn it over 22 times. I'm just going to assume that they don't turn the basketball over more times than the field goals that they make. Seriously, I find it really hard to believe that they're going to turn it over that many times again, especially at home. I also don't expect for Danny Wolf to struggle as mightily as he did in that game in West Lafayette. So he was, 1 of 7. He's going to play better. He is. Like, tonight's game, I think, should be much better than the last one. It's also a big game. Like, the nice thing about college basketball is these guys tend to always play hard, at least the guys on good teams. I don't know about the guys playing for the Hoosiers, but, the guys for Purdue, they usually play hard. The guys at Michigan tend to play hard as well. Michigan's actually favored in this game by 1.5, which is kind of crazy. Jeez, I take Purdue. I can tell you that right now. But this game's big, right? Because Purdue is 11-2 in Big Ten play. Michigan is 10-2, right? In conference play. Like, Michigan needs to win this game because their schedule to close out the year is tougher than Purdue's. It just is, right? And as of right now, Purdue is sitting atop the conference, but that's just because they've played one more game than Michigan and Michigan State. Both teams from Michigan are 10-2 in conference play. So obviously tonight, Michigan is going to play against Purdue. Michigan State, they're playing Indiana. They're probably going to win and prove to 11-2, could potentially be at the top of the conference at the end of tonight. But coming down the stretch for Michigan, they had to play Michigan State twice. Those games are going to be awesome. They had to play Ohio State and Nebraska on the road. Ohio State's not a bad team. Okay, like, they're probably going to make the tournament. Maybe, we'll see. They're kind of on the fringe right now. Nebraska on the road. Nebraska's not very good this year, so they should win that one. Then they get Rutgers at home. That should be a win. They get Illinois at home. That'll be a tough game. And they get Maryland at home. That'll also be a tough game. Like, there are some tough games there in that stretch for Michigan. That's part of why tonight's game is so important. And then you look at Purdue and what all they have going on after tonight. They have Wisconsin, which will be tough. Rutgers and UCLA at home. They should beat Rutgers and UCLA at home. That Wisconsin game will be tough. And then on the road, they have to go to Indiana. They should win that one. They have to go to Michigan State. That'll be tough. And they have to go to Illinois. This isn't the easiest schedule in the world either, but I think I would rather have Purdue's schedule than Michigan's. Because after tonight, I mean, of the remaining games for Michigan, they have to go on the road 4 times, which is just a lot. And I don't want to play on the road that much to end the season when there's just a little extra incentive, when people are, fighting to stay in the Big Ten tournament, or they're fighting to improve their seeding in, the March Madness tournament and all of those things. So tonight's game is going to play a rather large role in who's going to win the Big Ten, because obviously if Purdue wins tonight, they'll have the tiebreaker over Michigan. If they split 1-1, I don't know what the tiebreaker is. After that, if it's point differential, then Purdue should be fine. But we'll see. So big game tonight for Purdue. If they win, I really like their chances at winning the Big Ten that season. The Indiana Pacers also play tonight. They're playing at 7:30. They're taking on the Knicks, which should be a lot of fun. But they're coming off of a loss over the weekend, nationally televised game, playing the Lakers on the road. And, it's just a typical Pacers game. No LeBron James for the Lakers, no Luka Doncic for the Lakers, who made his debut last night. And if I have time later, I guess I can talk about that, even though I don't think, you probably don't care about it, so I won't get into it. But I thought that the Pacers were past the whole losing to bad teams thing, but apparently not, because they just didn't play well against the Lakers in the slightest. Siakam wasn't Siakam. He didn't play bad. He finished with 23 and 6 and 4, but just wasn't super aggressive shot. 6 of 15 from the field. He's usually a little more efficient than that. Tyrese Halliburton had what looks like a solid game. He had 19 points and 9 assists. He took 15 shots, which is usually the number that he needs to get to. The issue was the bench just wasn't as good as normal. Maybe I think that's part of it. Jarris Walker had a dud of a game. Aaron Nesmith, 0 of 6 from 3. It just wasn't a very good bench game. It didn't really feel like the other guys outside of Siakam and Halliburton showed up and played great. Andrew Nembhard only took 1 shot in 22 minutes. It was a bad game from the other guys. And then you look at the Lakers, and they got awesome games from their guys. Austin Reeves goes for 45. That's kind of crazy. Rui Hachimura only missed 5 shots. He finished with 24. And sometimes I guess you play games like this where your other opponent shoots the ball way better than you do. And part of that was the defense that the Pacers were playing. It didn't seem like the same level of intensity was there. They didn't have Miles Turner, which is kind of a funny thing to say, but he's the anchor of their defense. He's 5th in the NBA in blocks per game, hovering around to a game. When you don't have your rim protector, it's just a little bit tougher to get stops. And I think that's what we saw. The Lakers ended up shooting 52% from the floor, and the Pacers ended up shooting 43% from the floor. I will say the one really nice thing about this game, not really, is there were 55 free throws taken and only 3 were missed between both teams. We love that. Nice, good, fundamental basketball. Both teams making free throws. It was great. In all seriousness, tonight I expect for the Pacers to play incredibly well. Miles Turner is still questionable. He is in concussion protocol. Either way, though, I expect for the Pacers to play well because they're playing the Knicks. They're hosting them. They're 2.5-point underdogs, and I am very intrigued to see what this game looks like because the Pacers have really figured things out here as of late. And early in the year, they would play some of the better teams, and you'd be like, they're not healthy, and is Jarris Walker really going to play 28 minutes in a playoff game? What are the Pacers really going to look like against the Celtics and the Cavaliers and the Knicks? And tonight, we're going to get to see the Pacers host the Knicks. The game's here. It's at Gamebridge. If you can go, you should go because everyone gets up for whenever they play the Knicks because everyone wants to beat the Knicks because they're the Knicks. This is a nationally televised game. Guys play harder when games are nationally televised. And so I am so intrigued to see what they look like. because they're at full strength. Pascal Siakam, he's an all-star. He's playing pretty well here as of late. The defense from the Pacers, as I have, talked about a lot this year, is much improved. I really hope that Miles Turner plays. That way we can get a full look at what this team looks like against another team in the Knicks, who are also playing incredibly well right now, as they should. Like, they're super talented. They only go like 7 deep, which is kind of problematic for them. But either way, the Pacers have an opportunity to make up a little bit of ground. Okay, they're 4.5 games back of the Knicks for the 3 seed. They're a game and a half up on the Bucks for the 4 seed. Like, this is a game that they need to win because a 4 seed's great, but I wouldn't mind seeing them have a 3 seed. Like, I would rather them play the Pistons than the Bucks, because the Pistons don't have, Giannis or Damian Lillard or anybody like that. But the Bucks do have Kyle Kuzma, and there's a large part of me that would love to play against Kyle Kuzma in a playoff series. So maybe we root for that instead. But tonight, they're playing against this, Knicks team who's one of the 10 best offenses in the NBA. Right? They got a bunch of dudes who can score. Like, Karl Anthony Towns is having a really good year. Jalen Brunson's one of the 10 best basketball players in the world. Like, Mikal Bridges is an amazing basketball player, and he's an afterthought on this team because of how good they are offensively. OG Anunoby, when he's been healthy, has been really good, and he's been healthy for the most part this season. And so, like, I'm very intrigued. Like, how do the Pacers defend them? Do they do the full court press thing? Because the Knicks really only have 7 guys that they like to play. Like, what is the game plan going to be? How are they going to look? Because this is going to be, like one of those games where you kind of measure yourselves against one of the teams that you may have to play against on your way to or even in the Eastern Conference Finals. So can't wait to watch this game tonight. Can't wait to put a bow on the NFL season here in about 10 minutes when Kevin Potts joins the show. We're going to talk Aaron Rodgers. Where should he go? Where should he, most definitely not go? All of those different types of things. And before Kevin joins here in about 10 minutes, I want to talk a little bit about the halftime show of the Super Bowl, because there's just been a lot of discourse about it. And I think this is one of those things where I don't think that the halftime show is for the people watching football, because, like, I'm going to watch the Super Bowl because I like football. No way around it. Like, it's just, like, I don't care who does the halftime show. I think most people that watch football fall into the same boat of just like, I just want to watch the game. And I think that the halftime show is always for the people who don't care as much about the game. That's why they have people like Katy Perry. Okay? Like, all the guys that I know that enjoy football don't really care about Katy Perry. Okay? But I remember when she did the halftime show, geez, that was a long time ago. All my non-football caring friends, aka women, were very excited. Same thing when Beyonce did the halftime show however many years ago that was. Like, I think that the NFL, I think this is on purpose. I think that the NFL designs the halftime show. They bring in an artist for people who don't care as much about football. Seriously. And, they also want to create a buzz. And I think that bringing in a guy in Kendrick Lamar, who's got a lot of stuff going on, there's the whole Drake beef. Like that is just an extra storyline for them that just brings a little bit more attention, right? Because I think that is the goal of the NFL whenever they schedule these halftime show performances. Like, they want to bring in the non-football people. I think that's part of why when Taylor Swift and Travis Kelce started dating, they showed Taylor Swift on TV a ton. Because let's be honest, Swifties usually they're not football fans, right? But they were watching, they were paying attention because of her, and they wanted to invite them in, so they showed her on camera a whole bunch. And I think that the halftime show is the exact same thing. It's like, because, look, I grew up in a place where, rap was a really big deal. And Like all my buddies that, wanted to be rappers and all that kind of stuff, they didn't care about the NFL or football or anything like that. And I think that putting Kendrick Lamar on was a way to invite in the people that don't care about football and care more about Kendrick Lamar and the drama between him and Drake. Like that's why they went with him. It's not why they went with, Morgan Wallen or whoever else, whatever other super popular artist that you like. Okay. Because I'm willing to bet that the people that like Kendrick Lamar aren't, aren't tuning into my show every day. It's just a different type of people who have different interests other than football. So I think that's why they went with him. It was just to invite in a kind of different crowd to enjoy the Super Bowl experience. And I feel bad for that was not a great Super Bowl experience. Coming up here in about 5 minutes, Kevin Potts of the Kevin Potts NFL and NFL Draft Breakdown Substack. He's going to join. We're going to put a bow on the NFL season, finish up some stuff, talk a little more Super Bowl. I still can't believe how just disappointing that game was, but we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk a little bit about the future of the Colts. Should they bring in Aaron Rodgers? Should they not? Kevin Potts joins the show here in about 5 minutes.
It's time for the real Jonathan Smith Show. This is Indy Sports Ticket 1430 AM, 93.9 HD2, and always on the free Indy Sports Ticket app.
The real Jonathan Smith Show here on Indy's Sports Ticket. Hopefully you're having a nice start to your week. Thanks for tuning in, no matter how you're tuning in, whether that's YouTube, over at Indy Sports Ticket. Maybe you're watching on Twitter, the Indy Sports Ticket app, or just good old 1430 AM. Joined now by Kevin Potts, writer of the Kevin Potts NFL and NFL Draft Breakdowns Substack. Kevin, what's going on, man? How are you?
I'm doing well. It's a little sad when the NFL season ends like this, but NFL's eternal. We always have a good offseason out of this sport, so I'm excited to get into that.
Yeah, would you be less sad if the Super Bowl had actually been good?
I mean, yeah, you would obviously like the final game, the mountaintop, to be this instant classic like we've had. In the past couple of years, we've had some really good Super Bowls, I feel like. So we were kind of due for maybe a stinker. It's always a bummer when that happens, especially when we talked about it, we thought it was going to be a pretty good game. So when this happens, definitely a little disappointing.
Were you surprised at how big of a blowout it was?
Yeah, I think anytime you see 34-0 in your Super Bowl, you're surprised. We talked about this past couple of weeks. I thought the Chiefs were going to win. I thought they'd probably win a close one. If there was going to be a blowout, this was always going to be the recipe. It was just dominance up front by the Eagles. But, yeah, you don't expect Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs to ever be down by that much.
You really don't. Joined by Kevin Potts, writer of the Kevin Potts NFL and NFL Draft Breakdown Substack. And it was from the jump. The Chiefs come out and they hit that little 11-yard throw to Juju Smith-Schuster. And that's the only first down they got in the first half. I mean, just incredible. And I thought something I found very interesting about the game was the Chiefs never even made an attempt to run the football. They only ran it 3 times in the first half. Were you surprised by that?
I was a little surprised that they didn't try and stay more balanced. Maybe it wasn't necessarily going to be just from strictly running the ball. I thought they would try and get to some of those more creative screen options and just different ways to get those quasi-run plays going. I think they realized very early on they had absolutely no shot to move the ball up front. And they just said, hey, we're going to put it in the hands of 15 because that's the only way we're going to win. And he didn't play well enough for that strategy to work.
You're very kind, Kevin, because I would say he played awful. Obviously, the pressure played a major role in why he struggled. My thing is this isn't 2020 against the Buccaneers when he's 24. He's 29. He should have a lot of the answers. Why was he so bad?
I think he came out slow to start. Most of my issues with Mahomes' play was in that first quarter. You talked about they hit that little Juju pass. But other than that, he missed a couple ones to Kelsey. The location was a little bit off. He didn't really ever get into that rhythm. And then by the time I feel like he started to play well, it was 17-0. Game was over. We had seen this offensive line had just fallen apart. All 5 guys were losing. He clearly got in his head. His footwork got bad. And then you started to see other guys like Hopkins starting to drop the ball, and it really kind of snowballed. I just think when he started slow, they couldn't afford that. And when they got into a game, they got very unbalanced as an offense. They got into the pure drop back game. They didn't expose all the other issues up front. And then I think at that point, Mahomes was just screwed. But I mean, this is a player we talk about putting in GOAT conversations. And he came out and he didn't play well enough to start. And it put his team in a spot where they were not in a good strategy to win because they can't live like that. And then once it got to the second half and you were just throwing the ball every play, it didn't matter how well he played. That game was over.
Yeah, when you get down 34-0, you're toast most of the time. Joined by Kevin Potts, writer of the Kevin Potts NFL and NFL Draft Breakdowns Substack. The Philadelphia Eagles defensive line being dominant isn't super surprising when you think about the depth and the fact that the Chiefs are having to play a guard at left tackle. That makes sense. But at the same time, or I guess on the thing that I found surprising was the Chiefs defensive line. I just thought that they'd play better. I know that this Eagles offensive line's really good, but so is the Chiefs. Were you surprised at, I guess, the struggles that the Chiefs defensive line had to generate pressure on Jalen Hurts?
Yeah, I thought they'd get a little bit more, especially over that right guard with Becton, who hasn't always been the best in pass protection. I think the Chiefs, their entire game plan was to really sell out against the run and generate their pressure from those blitzes. And credit to Philly, they did a really good job in using to complement the run game and just picking up a lot of those pressures. Even when you'd see those Spags blitzes, they brought 5 or 6 guys. They did a fantastic job picking it up. I know Saquon didn't have the best rushing game, but I thought he was really good in pass protection. I just think this Philly team, we talked about coaching for 2 weeks leading on, but did a fantastic job prepping to cover up some of their weaknesses in pass protection. It certainly showed.
Yeah, and it was really impressive. I was concerned early when Spags was having to like dial stuff up. Like usually, he waits until the fourth quarter, but they're sending weird blitzes in like, the second quarter. And it's like, geez, they're fighting for just about anything right now. And then obviously, the Eagles wind up running away with it. Joined by Kevin Potts, writer of the Kevin Potts NFL and NFL Draft Breakdowns Substack. If you have questions about any NFL draft prospect, Kevin is your guy. I'm curious because you spend a lot of time evaluating guys coming into the league, and Howie Roseman, I would argue, is the best general manager in the NFL. Like, why is he so good at his job?
I think it's a really good job of not overthinking it, which sounds very easy to say. Just do the obvious thing. But a lot of these GMs, especially when they feel like their job security is on the line, they take a lot of risks. Howie doesn't really do it. He has a very set plan. He's going to invest in the trenches. He goes after guys with traits. They're usually from big schools that have done a lot of production. Sometimes you're going to miss there, but generally when you follow that path, you're going to hit more than you don't. And he's also very good at value in trades. Both Nolan Smith and Cooper DeJean were picks that they added from trading back. It's something all the nerds love in terms of getting value in a draft, and it works out in the long term. And some GMs don't always have the luxury to do that, but we've seen Roseman over a long stretch of time now continuing to stick to that plan of doing the high EV moves, building through the trenches, adding SEC Big Ten players that are really talented. And you see over time that it really does work when you that type of strategy.
So the way that you worded that about Howie Roseman, it sounds similar to Chris Ballard here in Indianapolis. Invest in the trenches, look for guys with traits. What is the difference, do you think, in their approaches in terms of how they draft and how they operate?
Part of it is just Roseman's been right more. And sometimes that's just what it comes down to is you hit at better rates. But I think it's free agency for Roseman is the additions of the Zach going against the grain and paying the running back in Saquon Barkley. He's been aggressive in moving off of players like Carson Wentz, even though they had money allocated to them. He's done a really good job in trades, free agency, and the drafts all at once. And when you hit all three of those, even though you're going to make mistakes, you're going to miss on some draft picks, you're going to make some bad free agency signings. If you're good and proactive in all three of those, it makes it easier to cover up for mistakes. And I know you've talked about with the Colts is like, hey, let's go spend some money and bring in some players. And I don't think they do that at the level that we've seen Philly do with some of their big contracts like Barkley or the reclamation projects like Bond and Becton.
Joined by Kevin Potts, writer of the Kevin Potts NFL and NFL Draft Breakdowns. Substack also has a YouTube channel called K Potts NFL if you want to check that out. So you mentioned the Eagles signing Saquon Barkley and paying him. What does him having such a large role in this Eagles run do to the running back market this offseason?
I think we're going to see a lot of teams dive into this draft class because it's actually the reverse this year of what we had last year. It was a really good free agency class, but not that many guys in the draft. The free agency class, there's really not much to spend on, but there are amazing running backs from top to bottom, from first round to seventh round. You can probably get starters in this class. So I think you're going to see a lot of teams try and invest and get these running backs. The interesting one is going to be Genty because he is the one you can talk yourself into having the Saquon Barkley effect on your offense. Is there a contender? Is it San Francisco 11? Is it Dallas at 12 that views themselves as a playoff team currently as they stand and adding a explosive playmaker? Does that take them over the hump just like Barkley did with the Eagles? So I'm curious to see how that shakes out. But since it's not a big free agency class, I don't think you're going to see the big contracts. You're just going to see a lot of investment of draft picks at that position.
If the Colts, this is what I think that the Colts should do. Colts aren't close to winning a Super Bowl in any way, shape, or form. Jonathan Taylor does not push them over that hump that you referenced. I think they should trade him, get draft picks, address more important positions than running back. What do you think he would go for if the Colts were to move him this offseason?
Oh, he's been obviously very good. He's been banged up and he's on a contract. He's probably going for like a 3 or a 4. It's really tough, I think, to trade for these big contract running backs, especially if they've been banged up at all, to get anything of value. I think, like you said, the value for doing that will probably just be moving off the money, and you can reallocate that money elsewhere and use whatever your early day 3, late day 2 pick is to add a running back. There's a lot of good ones in the class. But I think generally trading veterans that cost money like that, unless they're a quarterback, you're probably not going to get great return.
Okay, fair enough. Joined by Kevin Potts, writer of the Kevin Potts NFL and NFL Draft Breakdowns Substack. So Nick Sirianni has been quite the topic throughout the season. They wanted to fire him in September. Now he wins the Super Bowl. How does him winning this Super Bowl impact your view on him?
I struggle with Sirianni because he's clearly a good coach. You don't win as much as you do if you're not a good coach, but they have a very good roster. It's obviously very well built for him. I'm not always 100% sure what his exact role in the team is. What I've settled in is he is the perfect coach for this roster. It's a different skill set to manage this many talented star players at a high level. And I think you see it in basketball more than you do in football. Kind of what Steve Kerr with the Warriors is managing all that talent more so than just scheming up the overall game. And not to discredit Kerr and what he does on the whiteboard, but I think Sirianni is a similar way where he can obviously be a good offensive coach. It's what he came up with. But I think his ability to manage these in a city like Philly with those fans is something that's hard to quantify. But with the amount they've won, I think it's starting to be undeniable how well he fits this team and that city.
Yeah, I think I have a hard time with him as well. Because you're right. Like he wins a ton. But my thing is, like, even after winning the Super Bowl, I just like when he first showed up, it felt like they won a lot of games because Jonathan Gannon was an excellent defensive coordinator. Shane Steichen was an excellent offensive coordinator. They both leave. Sirianni hires 2 different coordinators. I don't even remember who they were. They weren't very good last year. And then Howie Roseman steps in and is like, I'm actually going to hire your coordinators. And he goes out and he gets Kellen Moore and Fangio. And then all of a sudden they're great again. And I just, like, it feels like he has to have great coordinators, which doesn't really feel like a fair thing to say because it's obviously easier to win games when your coordinators are great. But at the same time, him winning this Super Bowl, like, doesn't make me want to hire him more than all the other coaches that I would have ranked in front of him before this game happened. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and that's kind of why I think he's the perfect coach for Philly. It's one of those situations where both the team and him might not be better off if they went different directions, but them together works really well. And obviously, Roseman was a big part in hiring the coordinators. But Sirianni does deserve credit. 2 separate sets of coordinators that have integrated and worked well with this team, especially with a quarterback who's not always the easiest to build around. I do think he deserves a lot of credit for making all these teams work. But I agree. If I was trading a team, I don't think I'm hiring as a coach. I just think he's the perfect coach for Philly. And sometimes that's just how the sport works, where it's like, hey, you're maybe not the best, but you work in this situation. And clearly that's enough to win Super Bowls.
It is. You got to be a special breed to be able to yell at A.J. Brown and then dap him up 5 minutes later. Joined by Kevin Potts, writer of the Kevin Potts NFL and NFL Draft Breakdowns Substack. With the draft coming up, the Chiefs clearly need to improve. What do you think their draft looks like as they look to win, their 3rd Super Bowl in the last 4 years this next season?
I mean, I think it's got to be offensive line. We all saw what happened on Sunday. They just don't have enough up front. Trey Smith is a pending free agent at right guard. It seems like he's going to be one of those $50+ million guards. I don't know if they can keep him. They should move Joe Thuney back to left guard, because moving your really good left guard to left tackle where he's bad doesn't actually fix things eventually when the magic runs out. So they need options at left tackle. They have drafted a couple that were more long-term plays, so they maybe have some options there. But for me, at my first mock draft, I haven't been able the left tackle from North Dakota State. He was a guy that played tackle, guard, and center at the Senior Bowl. I think getting them one of those high-floor linemen that can play a bunch of spots is probably their best case, because you can't have this happen again. You can't have Mahomes running for his life on the biggest stage for the second year in a row.
What happened to the left tackle that they drafted in the second round this last year?
He played a little bit. He wasn't great. Some people really liked him, had like a first round grade on him. I was a little more lukewarm, had like a late second. He's incredibly talented, had a lot of technique issues. He was a former right tackle, switched to left tackle, only played 1 year there. Played at BYU, which obviously not the biggest school. So he was always just going to be a long-term play. Asking him to step in and play left tackle as a rookie for this Chiefs team was just always an unrealistic option for me, which was kind of surprised why they went with it. But I do think it's reasonable for them to expect a year 2 jump out of them, and maybe they just go young at that spot and try and fix the rest of the offensive line.
Joined by Kevin Potts, writer of the Kevin Potts NFL and NFL Draft breakdowns over on Substack. Also has a YouTube channel, K-Potts NFL. Last topic, and I'll let you go. The Jets are not going to bring Aaron Rodgers back. Which teams should be looking to go and bring on the interesting figure that is Aaron Rodgers?
I honestly don't think any team should at this point in his career, and I do still think he is a solid back, but he's one of the worst offensive coordinators in football. You mentioned he's going to bring baggage off the field with what he does in the media, and probably try and bring his friends along. I do think some teams going to take a swing at it. I don't know if it's going to be one of those teams at the top. It's like Tennessee or Vegas that just doesn't really like his quarterback class and just thinks adding the veteran quarterback's the option. Maybe it's a team like the Steelers or the Saints that have these veterans who they might just view as Rodgers as a slight upgrade to. But I just don't really see him as a difference maker at this point, and I don't think his solid 15th overall quarterback play is good enough for everything else he brings with him.
What about the Colts? Would Aaron Rodgers make sense for them?
No, because he's just going to try and overwrite this entire offense. For all the Colts issues, I think that they have built a collection of offensive pieces that I think work really well together. And you're going to bring in Rodgers, and he's going to set TNT to the entire thing. He also hasn't really indicated that he is willing to or able to help grow a young quarterback. So I don't know how that would factor well with Anthony Richardson. It is a whole pile of worms that I just wouldn't want to touch if it was my team.
What? You don't think the Colts should hire Nathaniel Hackett? What?
Yeah, well, what retread offensive coordinator are you going to bring with him that he had when he was in college or something that he wants to promote?
Yeah, and it's just like Aaron Rodgers as the starting quarterback is problematic enough. Like, let's say, Anthony Richardson, his work with Chris Hess this offseason goes great, and he comes back and he starts over Aaron Rodgers. How do you think that would go?
Right? Like that's going to blow up the locker room in an even worse way than last year. And you're not good enough to do that. There's a certain level of crazy you get to be depending on how good you are. Yep. You see that with Draymond Green sometimes in the NBA. The worse you get, the less crazy you get to be. And Rodgers is officially at the point where he doesn't really get to be that crazy.
It's the crazy hot scale from How I Met Your Mother. I don't know if you've seen that or not, but that's exactly what it is.
That's exactly what I was thinking. Yep, that is exactly what I was thinking.
Yeah, for those who don't get the reference, basically in How I Met Your Mother, there's this scene where this guy talks about the crazy hot scale, and if the craziness exceeds the hotness, then you leave. But as long as she's hotter than she is crazy, then you're good to go. You should stay in that relationship. So. Yeah, I think that's exactly what it is. And, Aaron Rodgers is just kind of at a point where he's just not good enough to be that over the top and that problematic. I will say, though, him on Pat McAfee Live would be kind of cool.
That's true. I did forget. There's a lot of good Colts propaganda would get pushed out on that channel if those two were on it together. If he was on the Colts.
Oh, it'd be incredible. Like I wouldn't be able to watch because I produce a show from noon to 3, but every Tuesday I'd be figuring out a way to watch that. Oh man, that'd be, which honestly wouldn't be a bad thing. I'm sure you caught all the Colts fallout with McAfee stuff.
Yeah.
And I don't know. Do you think it's important for former players to still like and have a relationship with the franchise that they played for?
I don't think it's important. I think it'd be nice. I think we all like our former players to come back and love being with the team and retire and do ceremonies and stuff. But I think in the long term of what actually makes the team good and successful, it doesn't really matter as long as you're winning. I think it's one of the situations, if your team's struggling or the fan base isn't happy and former players are unhappy, it creates more strife. But as long as you're winning, it really doesn't matter, even if we'd all, I think, like it as fans.
Yeah, I completely agree, Kevin. Thanks for your time as always, man. You were great. I'm looking forward. We're 72 days away from the draft, right?
Yeah, it starts to sneak up on you if you're not paying attention.
That's right. So I'm sure we'll be talking to you a ton as the time gets closer. Thanks for your time as always, man.
Yeah, man, it's always a pleasure.
See ya. That is Kevin Potts. You can check him out on Twitter at KevinPotts06. Does an excellent job writing stuff on the NFL draft. Does a ton of player deep dives. I mean, it's fascinating just reading everything because he talks about things that as a casual football watcher you probably don't really notice. So check out all of his stuff. When we come back here in about 4 minutes, more on why the Colts should completely and totally avoid bringing in the problem that is Aaron Rodgers.
Unfiltered takes live here. The real Jonathan Smith Show. This is Indy Sports Ticket 1430 AM, 93.9 HD2, and always on the free Indy Sports Ticket app.
We'll start here. Thanks for tuning in to the real Jonathan Smith Show. I greatly appreciate it. Talking, with Kevin Potts in that last segment, we wrapped it up talking about Aaron Rodgers. Should he come to the Indianapolis Colts? Absolutely not. Under no circumstance should the Indianapolis Colts bring in the problem and distraction that is Aaron Rodgers. All he's going to do is come in and just blow everything up. Okay? Like, he's just going to bring in a big old thing of TNT. It's going to look like an old Tom and Jerry cartoon. He's going to stack it up all around this Colts organization, light that thing up and watch it blow up. And then he's going to retire and talk about how unfair he was treated in Indianapolis. They don't need that guy. Aaron Rodgers thinks that he's bigger than the franchise. And that used to be the case. When he was in Green Bay, yes, he was. He was an absolute stud. They should have done everything that he asked because he was that good of a quarterback. But he's not that good anymore. The Jets just gave him everything that he wanted, and he went 5-12. The Jets fired Robert Saleh because Aaron Rodgers wanted them to. They traded away draft capital to acquire his guy in Davante Adams. They hired Nathaniel Hackett to call plays because Aaron Rodgers wanted them to. And they went 5-12. He had Davante Adams and Garrett Wilson, two of the best receivers in the NFL. Those were his top two receivers for 11 games. And he had one game where he threw for over 300 yards, and he didn't throw for 4,000 yards on the season. He posted a career low this season in passer rating. It's not good. His second lowest passer rating in the season came his final year in Green Bay, the last time he started for a full season. This year, he posted the second lowest quarterback rating in his career. The lowest quarterback rating of his career came his final year in Green Bay, the last time he started a full season. He threw 28 touchdowns this season. That was the third lowest mark in his career. He threw 11 interceptions, which is the third most interceptions he's thrown in a season in his career. His final season in Green Bay, he threw 12 interceptions. That's the second highest mark of his career. His yards per attempt last year was 6.7. It's the lowest mark of his career. Aaron Rodgers' second lowest mark of his career in terms of yards per attempt came his final year in Green Bay. This year he posted his second lowest average passing yards per game. The lowest mark of his career came his final year in Green Bay. Are you noticing a trend? It's almost like Aaron Rodgers isn't very good anymore. It's almost like the last two times he started a full season, he put together the two worst seasons in his career. Okay? The Indianapolis Colts do not need him. He's not the mentoring type. Okay? He didn't like Jordan Love. Didn't like the idea of competing with him. He didn't like having to deal with Zach Wilson. That's why the Jets moved him out. To be fair, I would like to think that he understands that he's in a different place in his career at this point. But it's Aaron Rodgers. He's as delusional as they come. Don't do drugs, kids. Okay, Aaron Rodgers doesn't need to come to Indianapolis. I don't want another Band-Aid fix because that's what this is going to be. It's going to be Matt Ryan or Phillip Rivers all over again. Come in for a year. Maybe we make the playoffs. Maybe we don't. And then go retire. Okay, like that is what he is. Like, if Aaron Rodgers were to come here, he'd be here for 2 years max. The Colts might make the playoffs once. And then the Colts would be like, oh, we don't have a quarterback again. And I don't want to go down that same road again. Okay, I would rather than play Anthony Richardson, the Colts go 2-15 and draft a quarterback than bring in Aaron Rodgers to maybe go 10-7 and maybe sneak into the playoffs as a 7 seed. Also, why would Aaron Rodgers come here? He's Aaron freaking Rodgers. He's not going to come to a place like Indianapolis that has absolutely no chance at winning a Super Bowl. He's also not going to go somewhere where he's going to have to compete to be the starter. Because that's what would happen if he came here. This is one of the best quarterbacks ever. He's not about to go toe-to-toe in training camp with a guy in Anthony Richardson who just posted the second lowest completion percentage in the history of the NFL. He's going to go somewhere where he can step in and be the immediate starter. Maybe that's the Titans. Maybe the Titans don't want Shedeur Sanders or Cam Ward. So they're like, we'll take Aaron Rodgers here for a couple years. Maybe it's the Browns. Same thing. Maybe the Titans take Cam Ward, and Deion Sanders is like, if you take Shedeur, he will not play for you. And so instead of drafting a young quarterback, they just go get Aaron Rodgers for a couple seasons. He could be a Las Vegas Raider. That place actually makes a lot of sense for him. But he's not going to be a Colt, and we shouldn't want him to be a Colt. He's going to show up, demand to bring, his guy, Nathaniel Hackett, and he's going to demand that they trade for, this receiver that was good 7 years ago. And then, he's going to make Shane Steichen change the entire offense. And it's going to be no good. He doesn't need to come here. The Colts don't need him. Plus, he's not a horseshoe guy. The Colts they don't take guys that have off the field issues. They've never done that before. So it's not even worth considering. So given Chris Ballard's comment about the importance of having competition in the quarterback room, who's the guy? And, a name was thrown out during the Power Hour yesterday on the Dan Dockett show, which is him, me, and Kent Sterling. They threw out the name Justin Fields. And in the moment, I hated it because I'm sorry. I just don't think that Justin Fields is that great. Okay. But I do think that he's a better option than Aaron Rodgers. Okay. Like, I could be wrong on Justin Fields. Okay. He could figure out how to throw the ball over the middle of the field in the fifth year of his career. Okay. Like he could develop, I guess there's still room for that, even though I think that after you've been in the NFL for, 4 or 5 years, we kind of know what you are. But anyway, I digress. With that being said, I would rather have Justin Fields than Aaron Rodgers. Because if Justin Fields does figure it out, he could solve the long-term quarterback issue for the Colts. He could. Like there is a scenario where that happens, right? That is actually a much more likely thing. Justin Fields shows up and plays great than Aaron Rodgers showing up and being great and not ruining everything. With that being said, I don't expect for Justin Fields to show up and be great because I think that when you put together, a 10-minute highlight reel of someone's career, if they're a quarterback and they have more impressive running plays than they do, passes of the football, then they're probably not a great quarterback. Okay. So the ceiling is much higher with Justin Fields long-term than the one with Aaron Rodgers. Whereas if it's Aaron Rodgers, it's him for 1, maybe 2 years. And then you're asking yourself, who's going to play quarterback again? And I'm a ceiling guy. It's why I advocated for the Colts to take Anthony Richardson with the 4th overall pick. Because it's look, this dude, he's got a high ceiling. If he shows up, if he figures it out, then he could be great. I'm also a long-term guy, right? And Justin Fields long-term is a better investment than Aaron Rodgers. And he's cheaper. He is. He's cheaper than Aaron Rodgers, which means you can take that extra money and you can go address other positions of need like corner, linebacker, safety, right or left guard. Or no, I guess not left guard. I guess center, right? Whatever, right? You have extra money left over to go and actually get better if you bring in Justin Fields as opposed to Aaron Rodgers. So go get Justin Fields. He seems like the clear and obvious choice. And let's see if he can finally figure it out here in Indianapolis. Worst comes to worst, he can't. He's the backup for Anthony Richardson. And when Anthony Richardson inevitably gets hurt next year, we can go to Justin Fields and not have to worry about changing the offense up all that much, which I think is a slightly overblown thing because Gardner Minshew was just fine the year that Anthony Richardson got hurt in his rookie season. Anyway, be aggressive, Chris Ballard. Go out and get good players this offseason in free agency. Howie Roseman is one of the most aggressive general managers in the NFL, and that is why the Eagles won a Super Bowl. He signed Saquon Barkley in free agency. He coughed up the extra money, and Saquon Barkley ended up being the offensive player of the year in the NFL. He's also now the 9th running back in the history of the NFL to run for 2,000 yards. Howie Roseman was aggressive in hiring coordinators. He goes and got the absolute best available, Kellen Moore and Vic Fangio. He put together a great draft class. He gets Quinyon Mitchell, trades down, is still able to pick up Cooper DeJean, who both ended up being finalists for the Defensive Rookie of the Year. Their biggest need was on the back end of their defense, and he addressed it with 2 picks, which is the best way to address it. He got 2 rookies who are going to be around for a while. They showed up and contributed immediately. Okay, he was also able to find a couple overlooked players to come in and contribute. Zach Bond was an All-Pro this year and got votes to be the Defensive Player of the Year. The Eagles signed him in the offseason. He was previously like a special teams guy. And he shows up and he just turns into one of the best linebackers in the NFL. Mekhi Becton, their starting offensive guard, was drafted by the Jets. I guess that was like 4 years ago. Drafted by the Jets to be their left tackle of the future. Didn't work out. Howie Roseman's like, hey, man, do you want to come play guard for us? And now Mekhi Becton's one of the better guards in the NFL. They also went out and they get, Oren Burks, who, is a backup pass rusher who had a pretty big impact this year. They go out and they get former Colt Isaiah Rodgers, as another defensive back who made some decent plays during, throughout his time so far in Philadelphia. Howie Roseman's ability to draft well and do some Moneyball type stuff in terms of finding overlooked and undervalued players and giving them roles to play on a Super Bowl team is why they won the Super Bowl. Like, you have to bet on something if you're a general manager. You have to trust your scouts. Like the Colts, believe it or not, pay people to scout the rest of the NFL. And I don't know why. Because the Colts never signed free agents. And in terms of a week-to-week scouting thing, Shane Steichen and the coaches, they'll all go back, watch film, and figure out, how to attack whoever they're playing. Okay, the Eagles won the Super Bowl because they did an excellent job signing free agents. Okay, the Eagles and Howie Roseman take a ton of swings on players. They are aggressive, and they miss sometimes. Think about their team last year. They weren't very good because they missed on some players. But a large part of why they win is because they take those swings. And when they do hit, it goes well. Like, let's be honest. Like, you got to kind of get a little lucky to win a Super Bowl. Like, you have to hit on a couple mid-round draft picks, or you have to sign unattractive free agents that contribute more than you thought. Think Zach Bond. Okay, the Colts never give themselves an opportunity to luck into that because they just don't do anything. Like, it's the whole, like, you can't hit a home run if you never take a swing. And the Colts never take a swing on anything. It's why for the last, 4 or 5 years, their core players have been the exact same. Quentin Nelson, DeForest Buckner, Jonathan Taylor, and Michael Pittman Jr. Like, that's their core. Okay, and it has been. And guess what? That's what their core is going to be this next year and the year after that, all the way until those 3 guys retire, having played in like 3 playoff games. Okay, you have to be aggressive in acquiring players. The Colts are not that, and that's why they struggle to make the playoffs. When we come back here in about 4 minutes, speaking of struggling to make the postseason, we're going to talk about the Indiana Hoosiers. There is a path for them to win tonight. It's pretty narrow, but there is a path. I'm going to tell you what that is when we come back here in about 4 minutes.
Texting enrolls you into recurring automated text messages. Consent not required to purchase. Message and data rates may apply.
Hey, Dan, how you doing? Haven't seen you around the gym for a while.
Yeah, I've really fallen off. Since I turned 40, I just don't get the results I used to get.
Could be lower testosterone.
Lower T?
Yeah, I went through it a while back. Once you hit 40, your body has less free testosterone. I got Nugenix Total T, and it's made a huge difference for me.
I've seen that ad on TV. Is it for real?
Oh, yeah. The key ingredient is something called Tesnor, which helps boost free and total testosterone.
The best takes. The real Jonathan Smith Show. This is Indy Sports Ticket 1430 AM, 93.9 HD2, and always on the free Indy Sports Ticket app.
What's going on? It's the real Jonathan Smith Show here on Indy's Sports Ticket. Thanks for tuning in, no matter how you're tuning in. Whether that's YouTube, Indy Sports Ticket, if you want to head over there and subscribe. It's probably the best way to watch, lay in on all the opinions that we're giving out here on the show. You can also watch on Twitter, _ Jonathan Smith. If you want to follow me there, you can also follow the station at Ticket 1430 for all the updates on my show, and also the Dan Dockett Show, which will be live today from noon to 3. The Indiana Hoosiers are going to do their best tonight to not embarrass themselves again. They're playing against Michigan State, and Michigan State, they've got that number 11 by their name, and they're 11.5-point favorites, and it's just feels pretty not great for Indiana. And the question tonight is, can they finally beat a good team? Probably not. The good news is Michigan State hasn't beaten many good teams either. In their non-conference, they played 2 good teams in Kansas and Memphis. They lost both. Sure, they beat North Carolina, but North Carolina's underachieving. Michigan State's best win on the year was against Illinois, who just fell out of the top 25. And in that game, Kasparis, the big guy from Europe, the big white dude from Europe for Illinois, let's just call him that. He fouled out after only playing 9 minutes. Illinois' best player played 9 minutes in that game, and Michigan State only won by 2. They've lost 2 out of their last 3. They lost to UCLA and USC. Neither one of those teams are ranked. USC not even getting votes. Okay, Michigan State just hasn't beaten a ton of good teams. Now, to be fair, they've avoided losing to most of the bad ones. It's part of why they're 11.5-point favorites tonight against Indiana. But that being said, like if USC can beat Michigan State, then Indiana can definitely beat them as well. Okay, Indiana is the third worst three-point shooting team in the Big Ten, which is bad. The good news is Michigan State's the worst three-point shooting team in the Big Ten, shooting about 29% from three. Okay, the reason why Michigan State wins games is because they rebound, defend, and share the ball well. They are second in the Big Ten in rebounds per game. They're second in the Big Ten in rebounding margin. They usually out-rebound their opponents by about 10 rebounds a game. They're second in the Big Ten in assists per game. And defensively, they protect the rim. They lead the Big Ten in blocks at just over 5 a game. And like this is what this team does well. They play defense. They are an excellent defensive team. Indiana is going to have to they're going to have a tough time scoring tonight. Okay, but if they can have a night like they did against Northwestern, where they shot 45% from three, or a game like they did against Maryland, where they shot 42% from three, then they're going to have a chance to win this game. Okay, Indiana is capable of having a night where they shoot well from three. We saw it against Maryland and Northwestern, and we saw them do it against Purdue and Rutgers and Penn State. And in the second half of that Michigan game, they shot like 37% from three. So like they've had nights where they've shot it well, and that has to happen tonight because Michigan State is a great defensive team. If Luke Goody, can hit 3 threes, and if Mbako can hit 2, and if Trey Galloway can hit 1, and Anthony Leal can hit 1, then like they're going to have a chance to win this game because when you outscore your opponent from the 3-point line, it's helpful. Like if I make 4 more threes than you do, like that is a 12-point difference. It's a lot. Okay, the issue is Big Ten or Michigan State, once again, they're probably the best defensive team in the Big Ten. They lead the Big Ten in opponent field goal percentage. They hold their opponents to only 30% shooting from three. Like that's the second highest mark in the Big Ten. With that being said, because Michigan State's not a great shooting team, they are beatable. They also turn the basketball over quite a bit. So if you're going to beat Michigan State, you have to find a way to score, and you have to turn them over. They turn the ball over the third most of any team in the Big Ten. The issue is Indiana turns it over at the second most in the Big Ten. I'm trying to be positive here. I'm doing my best, but it's hard. Feels like every time there's something to exploit with Michigan State, it's like, oh wait, Indiana's not very good at that either. So if Indiana can make some outside shots, if they can, turn the ball over 10 times as opposed to 12 or 13, and they can get Michigan State to turn it over 15 times as opposed to 12, which is what they average, then like they're going to have a chance. Okay. Like I like Michigan State to win and cover because I'm not placing American currency on Omar Ballo no matter what happens. But to be fair to Indiana, like they've at least approached the hump in some of these games here recently. They lose to Michigan by 3. They lose to Purdue by 5. They lose to Maryland by 1. Maybe a good version of Indiana shows up tonight and they give us, at least a fun game to watch where it feels like they're at least playing hard. Who knows if that'll happen or not. We know that we're going to get that from Purdue. They're playing tonight on the road against Michigan. Are we going to get a Michigan revenge game? Potentially. Purdue embarrassed them in West Lafayette the last time they played. Purdue beat them by 27. It was a game in which Michigan had more turnovers than they did field goals made. Purdue just swarmed them from the jump. And I expect Purdue to pressure the basketball in a similar fashion as they did when they played earlier in the season. With that being said, I also expect this game to be closer because I don't think Michigan's going to turn the ball over 22 times at home. I also don't think that Danny Wolf is going to shoot 1 of 7 from the floor. Yeah, he's going to play better. Tonight's game should be much better than the last one that these two played against one another. It's also a big game. Purdue's 11-2 in Big Ten play. Michigan's 10-2 in Big Ten play. Both teams need this game if they want to win the Big Ten because both of these teams have tough schedules to end the season, right? So obviously they both play each other tonight. After tonight, Michigan has to play Michigan State twice. That's 2 tough games. They get Ohio State on the road. That game will be tough. They get Nebraska on the road. They should win that one. Then they get Rutgers at home. That should be. They get Illinois at home. That's going to be tough. And they get Maryland at home. That's another tough game. Okay? Like, there are some tough ones in that stretch. And then you compare that to Purdue, who after tonight has Wisconsin at home. That game will be tough. They get Rutgers at home. They should win that one. And they get UCLA at home. That game will be tough. And then on the road, they have Indiana. They should win that one. They got Michigan State on the road. And they have Illinois on the road. That's two tough games. Like, this isn't the easiest schedule in the world either. So this game is incredibly important to both teams if they want to win the Big Ten. Also, Michigan State, they're sitting at 10-2 in the conference as well. They should win tonight because Indiana's not very good. But their schedule to close it out is probably the toughest of the three. And then going on tonight as well, Pacers playing host to the Knicks. They are 2.5-point underdogs at home. Miles Turner is questionable. He was in concussion protocol. He's got like a neck thing as well. This game should be great because it's the Knicks, and teams always play hard against the Knicks. So we'll see how they look. They're trying to bounce back after losing on the road to the Lakers when the Lakers didn't have LeBron or Luka. Austin Reeves carving him up for 45 points. I expect for Jalen Brunson to have a pretty big game tonight because, I think Andrew Nembhard is a pretty good defender. With that being said, he could not defend Jalen Brunson last year in the playoffs. And, while I think that Andrew Nembhard has gotten better, I don't think that he's improved to a point where I just kind of expect him to be able to all of a sudden defend Jalen Brunson, one of the best scorers in the league. This is going to be a real test for the Pacers. They're fully healthy. Well, maybe we'll see if Miles Turner plays or not, but we're going to get, a nice little litmus test here as, just getting to compare them to, one of the other top teams in the East that has, Eastern Conference Finals and maybe even NBA Finals aspirations. This Knicks team, they can really score it. I expect for the Pacers to press because the Knicks only played like 7 guys and, speed them up, get the pace up, make them work, tire them out, go on a fourth quarter run late and win the freaking basketball game. Because that's what the Pacers need. Let's cross that 30 win mark, right? Let's cut the lead down on the Knicks, who currently have a 4.5 game lead over the Pacers for the 3 seed. And these head-to-head matchups are going to impact that. So very excited for that game tonight, 7:30 on TNT. When we come back tomorrow at 10 a.m., I'll have thoughts on that. I'll have thoughts on, IU, Purdue, all the basketball that's going on tonight. The Dan Dockett Show comes your way here in about 5 minutes. Thanks for taking the time out of your day to check out my show. I'll be back on the air again tomorrow from 10 to noon. The Dan Dockett Show comes your way here in about 5 minutes.